Hello and welcome to a brand new edition of the Tribe.co.uk's An Interview With series. I am your host Lance, and if you have been following our Conversations on Eagle Mountain podcast, you will of course know that we've reached the end of series 3. This endpoint marks the last regular appearance of several of the core cast members, including our favourites Vanessa Stacey, Ari Boyland and Michelle Ang. So what better way to reflect on these characters than to discuss it with one of the cast themselves. So please join me in a massively warm welcome to the amazing Ari Boyland, who of course played the role of Casey on The Tribe.
Thanks so much for having me. It's really fun to be able to dive back into the show after so long and see how much it meant and still means to so many people around the world.
Ari, I can't even express how amazing it is to have you here for this interview. The panel and I have discussed many times how overlooked Casey's been by the other members of his tribe. Despite the initial reaction of being a scamp out for profit, he has one of the largest hearts of gold, caring very deeply about his family. This has been shown numerous times, like when he stood up to Top Hat in order to protect both the tribe and Zandra, or when he even refused to take Alice's cherished possessions, yet still found the supplies that she needed. So, in your own words, why do you think Casey has stood out as such a great character? Do you agree with our assessment of him? And does it surprise you how much love there still is for this character, even 25 years on?
Yeah, it absolutely blows me away that the tribe's made it to 25 years and still has such a dedicated following. It's incredible. And I count myself very lucky to have not just been a part of it, but to have gotten to play such a great character. Yeah, Casey is definitely a scamp. It's a great descriptor for him. He's always looking for a way to maximize how much he benefits from any situation. I think it's a combination of who he is naturally as well as a learned behavior for him. Like, not only is he fundamentally a battler and a survivor, but he's also very smart and a very quick learner, and it really allows him to adapt and thrive in difficult circumstances. But at his core, Casey has a good heart and will always protect and look after those that are closest to him. I think the catch is that for the majority of his life, he just didn't really have anyone close to him. So joining the Mallrats and growing close to people who created a safe and caring environment probably had a saving effect on KC. I mean, who knows where he would have ended up or who he would have become if they hadn't caught him stealing all of their stuff.
Absolutely agree. It's definitely quite sad to think of what could have happened to his character if he didn't have the Mallrats around as his family unit. And speaking of 25 years, you were of course a very young actor when you initially joined the show. The panel and I have really enjoyed your performances, especially the times when you were unable to completely stay in character due to laughing. What is your favourite memory from the show?
Oh my god, the laughing. Yeah, on the very rare occasion that I've gone back to rewatch those moments, it makes me want to crawl out of my skin. But like, my ego as an actor aside, it just goes to show you how much fun we were all having while we were shooting. Like, I can't tell you how much we laughed, maybe too much and sometimes at the wrong times, obviously. A lot of the times it was the wrong time. I think we had a crew with a very special level of patience. But, I mean, hey, what do you expect when you create a show entirely of kids? You can't really expect much else. So that was probably the hardest thing, was not laughing at times where I wasn't supposed to be laughing. And to be honest, I think there were just so many amazing memories and firsts for me on that show, plus being so young, that the whole experience kind of merged into one massive great memory. Like, the people, the sets, the stunts, all of it was incredible.
Is there anything specific that you've learnt from your time working on Tribe? Like, whether about acting or the industry itself, that you have taken forward with you?
In terms of the lessons that I learnt from that show, I think it taught me a lot about work ethic and consistency. Like, we shot long seasons with a lot of episodes, and at 11 years old, it was a lot of pressure, but it was also just so much fun that it never really felt like work, apart from overtime. Overtime sucked. I mean, it definitely gets to a certain point on a Friday afternoon where you're like, I want to go home already.
Oh, ouch. Yeah, I can imagine overtime wasn't fun. It is always fascinating to discover when an actor brings a part of themselves into a role. How much of a young Ari was being channeled into the performance of KC? And yeah, were you able to make any suggestions about his character storyline or development?
I think so much of Casey was me. I'm the youngest child in my family. I have older siblings, and I definitely perfected the art of getting away with things and making situations benefit me. My sister will 100% attest to that. So I've always had a cheekiness and a charm, I suppose, that was so innately part of me that KC just fit like a glove. I mean, I wasn't a thief, but I think the moniker of Scamp may have also been a very fitting descriptor for young Ari. In terms of how much we were able to contribute ideas on set, that would depend on each director, really, but generally ideas would be heard and incorporated if they fit. I think my biggest request was to always do as much of my own fights and stunts and rollerblading and all of that stuff as I could. I just love that stuff and was luckily quite good at it, so it worked out quite well.
Oh wow, that's really fascinating to hear that you were allowed to make suggestions and they were kind of incorporated into the show as much as possible. And yeah, speaking of exploring what could have been, as we mentioned in the intro, it was a massive shame to lose such a beloved character in the show's fourth series, a sentiment that was compacted by the removal of several other prominent cast members. Thinking back, do you remember what your exact reasons were behind the decision to leave the show?
Yeah, to be honest, I was just ready to go back to being a regular kid again. As fun as this incredible experience was, I missed being with my school friends every day and just getting to have the same experience as everyone else. I felt like I was missing out on something really special being gone all the time. When I joined the show, I was in the final months of my last year at primary school, which was the greatest thing to ever happen to me at the time, but it meant that I missed out on a lot of things, like moving from primary school to middle school and then middle school to high school at the same time as all my friends. Like, I had to start late because of filming, and I would constantly come in and out for those 3 years, and it was really tough. And it made me different, and especially at that age, kids can be, pretty mean. And my friends had new friends and new cliques in a new environment. It made it really tough for me to find my place. So it just kind of got to a point where I had to make a really difficult decision between the professional life that I had and wanted so desperately, and whether I was willing to sacrifice my teenage years for it. And ultimately I decided, not to come back for season 4. But I've always known that acting is my passion and what I've wanted to dedicate my professional life to. So I knew that it would be there when I was done with school. But unfortunately, it meant an early unresolved departure for KC. But as a side note, I did actually offer to come back for the first few episodes of season 4 to write the character out, to resolve his story. But for whatever reason, production didn't find that to be necessary.
Oh wow, we're going to be debating that for months now. The fact that you were willing to help write out your character and it wasn't taken up on, that's just such a massive shame to both Casey and yourself. So imagine for a moment that Casey had remained in the 4th series. What would you have liked to have happened to the character? For example, do you see Casey being addicted to the Technos' technology? Or would he have taken advantage of it? Or would he have even ended up in the rebellion?
I absolutely think that Casey would have found a way to use the technology to his advantage. In fact, I'm pretty sure that he would have taught himself or found someone who could hack into the Techno system and would have been running things in no time. However, I do ultimately think, though, that with his developing moral conscience, he would have, found a way to use it for the greater good. That's what I like to think anyway.
We do, of course, get a glimpse of a grown KC being held captive by a mysterious tribe at the end of the show's 5th series, alongside both Alice and the Guardian. And I specifically remember the response to this within the fandom as being huge due to the popularity of all 3 characters. It was confirmed in one of our earlier interviews with Vanessa Stacey that she had filmed this as a favour and never really intended to return to the show. However, what was your perspective and reasons for filming this?
Yeah, I had every intention of returning for season 6. I believe Cloud9 had reached out to check my interest in returning, and at that stage I had had enough of being back at school and was ready to get back into it. But yeah, unfortunately season 6 was just not meant to be. It's a shame. I would have loved to have seen what a more mature, grown-up KC would have gotten up to.
Oh, we all definitely wanted that. And as we head into the future, it will be several years before you return to our screens where, like many other Tribe actors, you swapped one iconic children/teen drama for another, as you donned spandex and became a Power Ranger. Yet you joined at a really erratic time for the show, as it was on the verge of being cancelled. But that also meant that Power Rangers RPM became something very unique and special. So yeah, Ari, what was it like working on the show?
Yeah, I was so excited to be a part of the Power Rangers universe. Finally, after auditioning for that show every year for probably 6 years, finally booking a role in the last season. Well, what we thought was going to be the last season. It truly was one of the funnest on-set experiences I've ever had outside of the Tribe. You're right, it was a very unstable time for Power Rangers. As I said, our season was slated to be the final season ever made. So this actually somehow created a situation where the creative team were able to make some pretty bold decisions with the premise and storylines, which caused RPM to kind of now be widely considered a bit of a dark horse season and one of a lot of people's favourites. I would say that there was definitely an expectation for us to deliver something great with that show, as there was such a massive dedicated fan base, a lot of whom grew up watching the show and were now adults. And being the last season, or so we thought, we really wanted to send it off with a bang.
Did you feel any pressure? Due to being a ranger, you of course were a role model to kids and someone that they specifically looked up to.
There was definitely an expectation of good behaviour when becoming a Power Ranger. However, I'm not sure I would necessarily consider myself a role model as much as the character was. But I do see the impact that work has had when I occasionally attend conventions and I'm around the fan base, just seeing how important the show is to people and how much the show means to them. It really brings into perspective how much of an honour it is to have been a part of that show.
And I've got to ask, the Scottish accent for Flynn, where did that come from?
The Scottish accent, where did that come from? Honestly, based on the fight footage that we were using to mirror from the Japanese Super Sentai show, they didn't have much of an idea for who my character could be. He didn't really do much. So during the audition process, they suggested doing a couple of accents to see if that could inform the story of the character, and it turns out they really liked Scottish. So Flynn McAllister was born. That character really was written solely based around the fact that I auditioned with a Scottish accent, and they thought it was funny.
Your career as an actor has continued to flourish over the years, including major appearances in the popular New Zealand drama Shortland Street, to feature films such as Blood Punch. Which medium, TV or film, do you prefer to work in and why? And is there a different career that you wished you had ever pursued?
I think I enjoy TV the most because there's more of it to sink your teeth into. Like, character journeys are longer and more in depth, and there's so much more time to get into a rhythm and a flow with everybody that you're working with. But in saying that, a good script is a good script, and that's the main thing. So really, whether it's film or TV, I don't really mind. And no, acting has always been what I've known that I've wanted to do, which I suppose is a blessing and a curse.
Speaking of blessings, you have been a part of a recent project, which is the 6-episode drama Testify. For those unaware, please could you describe what the show is about and your role within it?
Sure, yeah. Testify is about a family who run a highly profitable megachurch, and all of the dealings that go on to make that function. The show explores the way that it operates and the relationships that it's built on. I play Paul, the eldest adopted son of the head pastor and his family. After having run away at 16, Paul comes home to confront trauma from his past and find closure. However, several things come to light which send him on a path of retribution, I suppose. The show's visually amazing, and through the eyes of different characters, it deals with several different themes, including institutional abuse and whether homosexuality can have a place within the church. It was an incredible project to be a part of, and I'm so proud of all the work put in by the whole cast and crew. yeah, so we're hoping for some international sales soon so that the rest of the world can have a chance to see it.
Ari, I am incredibly giddy and starry-eyed. It's been an absolute pleasure having you be a part of this interview, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this. Yeah, I mean, me and the panel are going to discuss this for a long time to come. But is there anything else that you'd like to add about your projects or any messages to the fans?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Unfortunately, no projects that I can talk about at the moment, but there are things that are in the works. So yeah, thank you so much for having me, and thank you to all of the listeners for your dedication and love for the tribe. It's an incredible show, and I feel so honoured to have been a part of it.